So, welcome to the first class of the AWS and cloud computing, and we are going to start some of the very interesting topic today. And welcome you all for the class. So, just before begin to the to the classes, I just wanted to have this session as to be very interactive. I will give you a lot of options to answer the question, and I'll give you a lot of time for you to answer the question and like ask the question on cloud computing. Okay, so before we are starting with that, this is the first day, and I'll be sharing you that most of you guys have access to this particular you know particular Google Drive where we have all the documents available. Okay, so if today is the first session, and as you can go for cloud computing, um, so the cloud computing, the PPT, the Google Drive, and you'll be seeing all the documents on what is cloud computing and introduction to cloud computing, right? So this is what something which we are going to see today. And so this is the AWS console. Okay, so anybody wanted to tell about uh, anybody want to tell about, okay, so Pragati, you have any question?
Yes, sir. I wanted to, I don't have access to this Google Drive. There
Okay,
is no
so
WhatsApp
just
group.
you can just drop me your email ID on this chat so that I can grant an access to you right away. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so Ram Shankar also, if you don't have access to the to this Google Drive, you can just send me a WhatsApp message also. I'll grant you an access to this one. Okay, so this is just to make sure that everybody's having access. All right. Okay, so you can just also drop me in the WhatsApp channel. WhatsApp, I will be granting you access right away after this class. Okay, good. So anybody want to tell about what is cloud computing and why we use cloud computing? Anybody wanted to start with just telling why we need cloud computing, why it's very popular, and what is the purpose of using cloud computing. Anybody? Okay.
So this cloud computing technology is used to save space and the amount of money that we invest. Say, for example, instead of having a virtual data server, it is easy to host that in the cloud so that anyone could access it anytime.
Yeah. Yes, very good actually. So thank you so much for your answer. Okay. So now so as you mentioned, properly mentioned, right? So initially, so I'm going to tell you that how the cloud computing has evolved and why the companies and people are started using cloud computing. Okay, so now let's see what happened in the in the earlier 90s, right? So this is the era of early 90s. So 1990. So what happens is that so whenever we are started with the computers, so the computers and most of the companies, most of the big companies, right, in IBM and so that Amazon, this kind of a the bigger companies, they have started initializing, started getting into the business. So before that, there are many companies of the IT companies, the banking sectors, they've started using their own data centers. So what is data centers? Okay, data center is nothing but the collection of servers. Okay, so how the data center has been evolved? So data center is nothing but we have a single room like this. If you put all your servers inside that, that's going to be a data center. Okay, for example, if you have a bigger space, and have you seen something about a server, right? What is servers? So for example, dell this data center, dell servers. Okay, dell servers. Okay, so this is what something that servers looks like here. Okay, this is what the servers. Okay, so what is the difference between servers and computers? So the servers and computers both are almost similar. Okay, the server will be having a higher capacity. Okay, so for example, if you have a desktop will be having a very, so let's consider this one. Okay, so this looks like a desktop. Okay, but inside this, the capacity of the server, I mean, the capacity of the components are very huge, right? That's why this particular component is called as a servers. And also with the cost wise, okay, so if you want to buy one server, okay, as you can see here, okay, so this is kind of a multi-modular server. So what do you mean by multi-modular server? It's kind of a modular server, we used to call it, right? So what's kind of a what do you mean by modular server? So each and every rack, as you can see here, each and every probably I can just zoom in like this. So each and every rack, so you can see here 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, probably 9. Okay, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and probably 8. So 8 into 8 16. Okay, so 16 modular servers are there, right? So what happens is that whenever you are having this, like, so whenever you're having so mini tower, mini tower server, uh, whenever we are having like this, each and every portion, this kind of a model, this module is called as a one server. Okay, likewise in a single module you'll be having a huge capacity. So each and everything is one single module will be compared to almost like 10 laptops. Just you can imagine, like, so this particular module is equal to 10 laptops. Excuse me. Okay, so then you imagine that, what is the capacity of this particular bigger servers. Okay, now so this particular server will be attached to another bigger storage. Okay, now let's go back to Dell EMC storage. Okay, so EMC, uh, so sorry, not EC2, EMC storage. Okay, so this is what called EMC storages, right? EMC storage looks like this. So this is kind of a storage device. Okay, so wherein we'll be having a lot of different operating systems, different components inside that. All right. So initially, whenever we are just working on the initial days, so what we have is that, we'll be having a different, bigger servers and storages, everything put together inside the single room, and we'll be starting with the data centers. So how data centers looks like? Okay. So what is data centers? Okay, data centers. Okay, so data centers. If you can see data centers, okay, it looks like this. Okay, so all the servers, all the components, everything put together in the single room is called as a data centers. Okay, so as we have seen here, as we seen in the previous class, right? One single server. So how much this one single server costs? Okay, so let me show you some kind of a very simple video of the data centers and all these things. Okay, so okay, I'm going to be opening this one, and I'm going to give a Dell server. Okay, so this is how the Dell server looks like. Okay, if you can talk about server, okay, what is server? And the Dell server looks like this. Okay, let's see for example, so this is kind of a server. If you can take it up. Okay, so now, and so you can just see the disks. Okay, so each and every disk is having a 112 TB of a hard disk. Okay, it's kind of a 12 TB. Right, so 12 TB of a hard disk it is there. So now imagine that, how much GB of hard disk is going to be consuming around, among all these kind of a hard disks. It's going to be huge, right? So this is what called as a storages. Okay, this is one single server have storages of, you know 12 TB of each hard disk, which is kind of a 9 rack, right? So nine hard disks. So next we can go inside the motherboard and all this stuff. Okay, so your motherboard looks like this. So this is the huge fan. Okay, so if you go inside the, this if you go inside the server room, you'll be getting a huge noise, right? So from where that noise is coming from? The noise is coming from this particular fans. Okay, so you'll be opening the fan. So this is what called a fan. Okay, so how we get our laptop will get that, that fan to get cooler. So we'll be using this particular fan to get the server cooler, right? So here these are all the Intel processors, all these things put together. Now we have a RAM disks. Okay, so this is what called RAM. So you must be knowing RAM and hard disks and CPU, right? So this is called CPU, we have seen earlier, and then this is what called of a RAM. So this particular RAM will be costing 16 GB of each RAM. Okay, so in our laptop we'll be having a 16 GB of RAM altogether, but we have a several rack. As you can see here, so we have several. Okay, so we have several rack of a RAM. Okay, so how many RAMs are there here? As you can see here. Okay, so 1 2 3 4 5 6. 1 2 3 4 and 5 6, right? 16 to 16 GB of RAM. So that much RAM is be having a capacity. Okay, so if you can see like this, there are a lot of components and CPU connectors and power supplies. As you can see here, in the last, you can see the SSD disk. Okay, so where we can use the SSD disk for the faster booting OS, and then we can use the hard disk power supplies. Okay, so this is what called a power supply. We have a backup power supply. Two power supplies are there. Okay, as you can see here, one and 2, right? So this is the one whichever is already been there. This is the second power supplies. So what is the power supplies will do? If one power supply goes down, then the other power supply will kick in. Okay, this is what called the server. Okay, so these server are put together in a single place. This called as a data center. Okay, so how this data center has been born with these servers? Now, as you can see here, data centers. Okay, so if you can see here, as you can see here, so with all these servers, so this is the data center where it's been getting built. All right. So now you can see here, there are some kind of a servers will be put in this place. Okay, so these are all the wires and cablings and everything. Okay, put together, and then they'll be loading with the servers. Okay, so where the servers, as you can see here. Okay, so as you can see here, so these are all the servers they have placed it here. Okay, so what they do, so they'll try to connect all the servers together, and they will just connect everything with the proper Ethernet cables, and big storage machines and everything. Okay, then the server room looks like this. Okay, so all the servers will be put together in a single place, and will be monitoring and managing. So the wire looks like this. Okay, the connections and all this kind of a wire looks like this. Okay, so now if you can see that Google data centers, the Google data centers looks like this. Okay, it's going to be pretty huge, and pretty massive in the 5.6 billion queries. So queries is nothing but for example, if you can type google.com. Okay, so 5.6 billion, that google.com queries will be arriving to the servers. Okay, so what the server admin will be doing is that, so their part is to be able to manage these data centers. All right, so this is what called data centers, right? So what we're doing here is that, okay, what we're doing here is that, so we put together all the data centers, all the data, so all servers and data centers put together. We're connecting the data center to each other. Okay, so this is one data center, and we are going to connect another data center together. Okay, so right, so this is what called the data centers in 1990s. Okay, so after this, what has been evolved is that, so we'll be evolving with the virtualization. So what is virtualization is all about? Okay, so the virtualization is nothing but, okay, so the virtualization is nothing but, so whenever there is a big server, okay, this is what called virtualization servers. So virtualization is nothing but, so whenever we are having a big server, so the big server is being wanted to be installing, okay, or big server wanted to be used. So instead of one server being used for one purpose, okay, so in future, in the previous class, what you have seen, okay, this is the data center where let's say, for example, this is server 1. It's a big server, right? Server 1 and server 2, and server 3. Okay, so all the servers are individual servers. Okay, so if you can imagine about the cost of the server, we have seen the server, right? So the cost of the server may be, around, almost like 5 lakhs or 5 to 10 lakhs based on the capacity. Okay, so this individual servers, okay, so this individual server will be costing almost like 10 lakhs. So instead of using this individual server for, only one purpose, so what we are going to do is that we're going to install one application that is called Hypervisor. Okay, so we're going to install one application called Hypervisor. This is the Hypervisor. Hypervisor is nothing but, what happens is that in the Hypervisor, so for example, and this is the server. Okay, so we'll be installing one kind of a OS. Okay, so for example, this is server 1. Okay, let's consider this is server 1. Okay, server 1. So if you can use the server 1, okay, the server 1 will be able to install one operating system. Okay, let's just like we have our own laptop, right? So you'll be able to install one OS at the time. Okay, so that particular server will be a Linux server or Windows server based on the operating systems, right? That is called the individual servers. So now what is hypervisor and what is virtual machines? So now in this case, so in the server 1, what are we going to do is that we're going to install some kind of a different software. Okay, so the software is going to be, it can be directly installed into the hardware. Okay, so this particular software is called as a hypervisor. So hypervisor is nothing but some kind of a small some kind of a small um, some kind of a small software or the OS. Okay, so whenever we are installing that particular uh, so sorry guys, so whenever we're installing some some kind of a okay, some kind of hard disks, some kind of a hardware or the software component on top of this one, on top of hardware, it become a hypervisor. So what hypervisor can do, instead of installing only one particular OS, it will enable you to share the resources. Okay, so for example, it will be sharing the all the resources, and it will create a multiple virtual machines. Okay, let's go back here. Let's go back to the previous video. Okay, so Dell servers inside. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the only one component, right? So we have this many hard disks. Okay, instead of installing only one OS with all these hard disks, what we can do, we can use the concept called virtualization. We can use the concept called virtualization. So all these hardwares, all these hard disks will be shared across multiple OSs. Okay, all this hardware or the hard disk will be shared across multiple operating systems. So in this case, I'll be able to install. So with this capacity, I'll be able to install almost like hundreds of small virtual machines. So virtual machine is nothing but okay the small operating systems. Okay, so what is a physical machine? So physical machine is nothing but this one. Okay, so whatever we are having it here, it's not a physical machine. So what is virtual machine? So if anybody asks you what is virtual machine or what is virtualization, so virtualization is nothing but installation of hypervisor on top of a bare metal server. Okay, and then utilizing and sharing the components, sharing all the server components across multiple virtual machines, multiple operating systems. That is called virtualization. Okay, so the hypervisor and virtualization will be coming into the very closed part. Okay, so let's go back to the drive, and so let's go back to the drive, and I'm going to show you the virtualization part. Okay, so this is kind of a cloud computing part. I'm going to show you something about virtualization. So now we can talk about what is so now let's talk about what is cloud computing. So the cloud computing is nothing but we have a servers, right? We have a data centers. Okay, so this is, let's say for example, this is one data center and this is another data center. So we have seen that so Amazon kind of a company. Okay, what they do is, okay, Amazon data center, Amazon. Let's consider what Amazon data centers will be doing. So if you can see all the images, Amazon map. If you can see this one, so Amazon is having a data center across the world. Okay, if you can see this one, a region map. Okay, Amazon is having a data centers across the world. So across the world, this is probably this kind of a very old image. So if you can see the latest image, so Amazon. Okay, maybe this can be the latest one probably. So in South India, and see Amazon having a data center across the world. Okay, and also Microsoft, right? When compared to Microsoft and Amazon Web Services, they have data centers across the world. They have established each other, all the data centers, and then they connect all the data centers together. Okay, let's say for example, this is the two data centers which is been available. Okay, let's remove this one. Okay, so what we do is they have these data centers created in India. For example, in India, they have a two or three different data centers. They connect each other, all data centers, for highly available infrastructure. So what happens is that, so when one data center goes down, okay, so if one data center goes down and another data center will be available. Okay, that's what called data center concept. Okay, so this data center will always be available. Okay, so what they do, what is the profit for the cloud computing companies? So what is cloud computing basically? So the cloud computing is nothing but they have all the data centers, they are renting it out to the public. So that is called cloud computing. Okay, so for example, if you have a Google Drive, okay, so this is the Google Drive, right? So in the Google Drive, AWS is giving this Google Drive for each and every people, right? So across the world, so whenever you're creating email ID, so you'll be getting some kind of a 15 GB of a hard disk space available. So how it is possible for any companies or any Google company will be able to give 15 GB of a free space for each and everybody, right? So where those data are saved? Okay, if we can think about it, so all the data are stored in the data centers like this. Okay, so data centers like this. So if you can see the data centers over here, all your data, all your so all your data will be saved on this particular places. Okay, so we call it as a cloud. The reason why we are calling it as a cloud, because we don't know where this data, where this, we don't know where this, where these data centers are located. But I know that my data is safe somewhere in the cloud. I'm not able to see the or data centers. Okay, that's why it's called as a cloud, just like a cloud, right? So if you can see outside the cloud, the cloud is nothing but, if you can see the cloud, but we don't know where exactly the cloud is there, right? We cannot do the Google map, or Google location to the cloud, where the cloud is there. So that's why it is called as a, that's what it's called as, so we don't know, we know the data centers, where the data center is located, but we don't know, where exactly, my data is being saved under the data center. Okay, that's what is called as a cloud. So what the company will be doing here, so they create the data center like this, they're giving for rent. Okay, so that particular rent will be cost effective for me, because instead of me buying all the servers and data centers and everything, so what the company is doing, the company is trying to give you as a hourly basis. Okay, for example, this is the data center. Okay, let's say for example, this is the data center. Okay, so I want some servers to be virtualization, in the concept, right? I want some virtual machines. So what I do, I go to this particular console or Cisco or any of the companies, whoever's providing a cloud. So I can just rent out some of the servers virtually. Okay, so then the company will be able to give me that particular servers. They'll be renting it out virtually. Then I'll be using it. I'll be paying it, as per the, as per the usage, right? So pay per, that's what it's called, pay per use. How much ever I'm using, that much ever I'm be paying. So that's what is called as a pay per use model. Okay, that's what it's called, pay per use. Okay, so how much ever you're using, that's called pay per use model. Okay, this is what called cloud computing. Okay, if you can see here, what is cloud computing is all about. Okay, the definition of cloud computing is the delivery of a computer services. So delivery of your computing services, so servers, storage and databases, networking software and more over the internet. Okay, so which means that if anybody is sharing resources over the internet. Okay, for example, it's the Google Drive. Okay, this is our company Google Drive, and I'm sharing this. I'm sharing this. The I mean, these documents over the internet for somebody else, or I'm using this particular Google Drive to store my data. That is what called cloud. Okay, so that's what it is going to be called, cloud. Okay, so let's see about the what's the evaluation of cloud and everything maybe later. So hope you understand the basics of cloud. What is cloud computing and how the cloud computing is getting benefited. So what is the how the cloud computing is getting benefited? So there are a number of users who wanted to go to the cloud, and then so they'll be utilizing these kind of a data centers, and then they pay them in a per hourly basis, right? So for example, this is my AWS console. Okay, so I go to AWS console. This is the console, and we have a different regions. Okay, so what is regions? So region is nothing but the collection of data centers. Okay, so let's get back to these regions and availability zones and later. But before that, I wanted to give you some time for the questions. Okay, yes, you can ask me some of the questions if you have. So what do you think about cloud? And you can ask me any kind of questions, whatever you have. Anybody have any questions? You can ask me any questions. What is cloud and why we use cloud, and what are the different types of cloud is there, and anything for that matter. Hello, anybody guys?
Yes, so I just want to ask regarding virtualization. You said that by installing hypervisor, we can convert a server into a we can
Yeah. So yeah. Can you want to finish your question?
yeah, sorry, I got here. Okay. So I just wanted to ask, like, you said about virtualization, right? Like in a physical server, we can install a hypervisor, and by installing hypervisor, we will be able to create virtual machines in in a particular what is it, in a physical server.
Yes. Right. Okay.
So yeah, so my question is, like, for example, I have installed the AWS.
Okay.
Okay, and I created a account in AWS, and by uh, creating it, I can create the EC2 instances in AWS.
Okay.
But in my Mac, I have not installed Hypervisor. So how am I able to create the virtual machines
In your Mac, is it?
in my system, in my physical machine?
Okay. So this is a good question actually. So for example, as you can see here, the virtualization, right? So this is a really good question. So what's virtualization we have seen? Okay, virtualization is a process of creating a virtual version of the computing resources such as the servers and storage and devices networking and the increasing the efficiency, right? So the core concept allow multiple operating systems and application to be run on the same physical machine. So if you can see the virtualization, I'm going to explain it to you about virtualization. Okay, so let's go back again. So if you don't understand the virtualization, then you won't understand anything. Okay, for example, okay, this is my okay server. Okay, so let's say for example this is the Dell server. Okay, so this is my laptop. Okay, so let's say for example this is okay, so okay, so this is, I can write it like this as my laptop. Okay, so where I have a keyboard and everything. Okay, so this is my personal PC. Okay, personal laptop. But this is the, okay, this is the server. Okay, so as you can see here, what is servers? Okay, let's go back to here and then we see this one here. This is servers, right? Servers having a huge capacity. Okay, so your question is how to make my computer as a virtual hypervisor or virtual machines, and how can I install the hypervisor on top of my machine so that I can use my laptop to be able to use as a cloud server, something like that, right?
No. My question is, like for example, I have created an account in AWS.
Okay.
Okay, and in AWS, we can create the like EC2 instances.
Correct.
Like the virtual machines, right?
Yes.
So my question is, why am I able to create it? Because up till now I have not installed hypervisor in my physical machine.
Yes.
How am I able to create without hypervisor?
Yes. Okay. So I got this question. So your question is, so I didn't install any kind of hypervisor in my laptop, but how will I able to access my access the cloud computing AWS resources on my laptop? Correct, right? So I will be able to do this. So that's what I'm answering. Okay. Now, so hypervisor, you have to be installed on a physical server. Okay. So for example, so if this is the, for example, this is the, let's consider this is the AWS. Okay, this is your laptop. Okay, so this is your laptop. Okay, this is the physical, this is the Amazon infrastructure. Okay, so Amazon is having a different servers. Okay, let's say for example, so whenever they're having the different servers like this. Okay, so what they are doing is that there are two ways to install hypervisor. So this is what I'm just trying to show you to here. So there are two ways to install the hypervisor. One is this hardware. Okay, this is hardware and then operating system and then application. So the hardware and then the virtualization and then the OS and then the application, which means that, okay, so which means that, so this is the hardware. Okay, this is the hardware which I'm showing you here. Okay, this is the hardware. So in this, okay, in this hardware, okay, what AWS is doing, so this kind of AWS infrastructure, right? So AWS infrastructure. So what AWS is trying to do is that AWS is installing the hypervisor on all this hardware directly. Okay, so AWS is installing all the hypervisor directly on this hardwares. So this is the, okay, this is the sorry, okay, this is the hard disks. I mean, this is the physical server. So what they do, they install, okay, hypervisor directly, which means that hypervisor is also called as a OS. Okay, hypervisor is also called as a OS, which is called VMware. What is VMware company will do? So VMware is creating their own OS. Okay, that's called your ESXi OS. ESXi OS. Okay, so what it's doing is that the AWS is creating, okay, VMware is created some kind of OS. It's called ESXi. So and then that what AWS is doing is that that AWS is installing that ESXi OS on top of this server. So what's the advantage of ESXi OS? What's the difference between ESXi OS versus the Windows OS? Okay, so I'll come back to that. So whenever you're installing that ESXi OS on top of the server, so ESXi and VMware, this is called hypervisor. Okay, this is also called as hypervisor OS. Okay, so this OS will give you will give you an option to share the resources with the multiple machines, and it's used to create the multiple machines. For example, okay, I'm going to tell you another example. Okay, this is your home. Okay, so in this home, this is okay. Let's have an example. This is a bigger space or shop. Let's consider. Okay, so what this shop? Okay, we can also give this give this shop as a rent. Okay, this kind of shop entrance. Okay, I wanted to give this shop as a rent. So there are two ways to give. Okay, one is that I can give this shop as a rent. Okay, as a whole. As a whole means the entire space I can give as a rent. So otherwise, what we can do also is that I can just divide this entire space into multiple shops, just like a mall. Okay, if you can go to the mall, okay, so they'll be having a small shop everywhere, right? So there is a small rooms they have constructed everywhere. So that particular they partitioned it, right? They partitioned all the rooms. So each an individual room, okay, each an individual room, okay, is considered as a shop. Okay, so in the entire space, in the entire empty space, how this big single shop has become a multiple shops. So what they have used some kind of a some kind of method to partition. Okay, so what is this partition will do? This partition will be able to share the bigger space into small chunks of a space, right?
Hmm.
So what do you mean by this particular partition is called as a hypervisor. Okay, here we have a bigger server. Okay, I'm installing some kind of a operating system or some kind of a OS on top of this one. This particular OS will give me a option or give me a flexibility to share this to share this particular server into multiple OS. Okay, instead of installing only one OS, I'm installing multiple OS. Okay, now what happens is that because the hypervisor is installed, I'll be able to the single virtual machine. Okay, so let's say for example, okay, single virtual machine or multiple virtual machines under here. Okay, multiple virtual machine will be able to share this resource. So what do you mean by sharing? It's nothing but okay. So if the hard disk size is if you can see here, if the hard disk size is okay 12 GB into 9, something like that. 12 TB into 9, almost like 1 lakh of GB is there. So on all 1 lakh of GB will be able to share. Okay, so we'll be able to share across two different virtual machines. For example, this particular virtual machine only required on 30 GB. Okay, so this one may be required for 100 GB. Okay, so all these resources will be shared across multiple virtual machines, and this particular virtual machine will be able to access through the internet from your laptop. So which means that hypervisor has to be installed in the server, not in your laptop. Okay, what you can do is what are you going to do is that you're going to just accessing this virtual machine. Okay, that is one way of accessing the hypervisor from your laptop. Okay, so that is one thing. So second thing is, as you can see here, so now I have a hardware. Okay, so let's consider. So I've told you about the virtual OS, right? So OS is going to be virtual hypervisor. Install it on top of this one, then I'll be able to access it. Next one, what's happening is that okay, this is the same hardware or this kind of laptop. Let's consider it's a laptop, my laptop. Okay, laptop. Sorry. Okay, this is a laptop. Okay, in this laptop, what's happening is that I'm installing the one OS. Okay, what is the OS is going to be? It can be a Windows or Mac, right? So I'm installing Windows or Mac. Windows or Mac. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to install hypervisor on top of this OS. Okay, on top of this OS, I installed one software is called as a hypervisor. Okay, this is called hypervisor. This particular software is called hypervisor. Okay, so hypervisor. Right, this is called hypervisor. Now, what is the difference? Okay, so now what I will be doing, this hypervisor will be enabling me to create multiple, sorry, create multiple OS or multiple virtual machines. Okay, create multiple virtual machines that can be shared. Okay, so if you can see here, it can be create multiple virtual machines inside this one. Okay, so what is the difference between this one and this one? Now you can tell me. So what's the difference between this one and this one is that, so you have hardware. Okay, this is also hardware. If you install hypervisor on top of this hardware directly, that is called as a type 1 hypervisor. Okay, and then all the OS components will be installed on top of the server. Okay, now type 2 is that just like a laptop, right? So you mentioned about your laptop. So how can you, without your installing your own operating system, how can your own hypervisor, how come your laptop will become a hypervisor, right?
Correct.
That's what it's called. So if you want your laptop to be also to be able to make it as a hypervisor, what you have to do, you have this is the hardware which is your laptop. You already installed on OS. It can be Mac or Windows or Linux, anything, right? And then
Yes.
on top of this one, you will be installing a hypervisor layer. Okay, this is going to be hypervisor. Again, on top of this, you are installing, and then on top of this one, you'll be installing the OS. Okay, so sorry, like this, right? So hypervisor layer, and then OS, and then operating system. You're installing operating system, and the operating system, you'll be installing another layer of a hypervisor. Okay, that is called type 2 hypervisor. Okay, let's go to the internet and just see some of the other images. Okay, type 1 versus uh, type 2 uh, hypervisor. Okay, if you can search for this one, you'll be getting some kind of a nice images. So what's going to be happening is that if you can see this one, if you can see this image, okay, I clicked on this image, and then it will be open now. Okay, let's consider this one. Okay, now, so this is the hardware. Okay, so this is the hardware what we have seen here. Okay, this is the hardware. Okay, and this is also hardware. So in the hardware, we are installing hypervisor directly, and then the OS means virtual machine will be installed on top of that. That is called as a type 1 hypervisor. It's a bare metal hypervisor or bare metal virtualization. Okay, and then type 2 is that something like you have hardware. Okay, on top of that you're installing OS, which means that you installed OS in your machine. Okay, and then on top of that you're installing hypervisor. So what is this hypervisor is called? What is this name of the? Anybody wanted to tell me the name of this hypervisor which can be installed in our laptop? Anybody?
Hyper-V.
Yes, Hyper-V, right? Hyper-V or VirtualBox. If you can see about VirtualBox, right? So I don't know how many of you have seen VirtualBox before. Okay, VirtualBox in Windows. Okay, if you can see this one, if you can see the images, see, you guys have seen that. Okay, you guys have seen something like this. Okay, let me just scroll it. I click on this one. Okay, maybe like this. Okay, so have you guys seen? I think it's opened. Have you guys seen something like this? Okay, so this is kind of a VirtualBox manager. This is the Windows OS whichever already installed, and then you're installing VirtualBox manager. So VirtualBox manager is nothing but the one software that's called as hypervisor. Okay, that what is that hypervisor will do? Using this hypervisor, you'll be able to install and create a virtual machines. Okay, this is called type 2 hypervisor. So type 2 hypervisor is nothing but you already installed OS on top of hardware, and then you're installing again hypervisor. This hypervisor is called as a the VirtualBox. So install VirtualBox, and then this is the VM. Okay, virtual machines is creating, right? And then now I want to answer to your question. Now, so your question will be again, if I understand it correctly. So now the AWS installed hypervisor and everything. should I need to install hypervisor in my laptop to access this one? Is it what the question is, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, you don't need any kind of hypervisor to be installed in your laptop to be able to access this one, because this already be a virtual machine. So just to access this virtual machine, you don't need hypervisor. Okay, if you wanted to make your laptop to become hypervisor, then you can do it. If you want to share it to somebody else, okay, then if you want to access this virtual machine itself, you don't need hypervisor. Okay, that's what it is called as a hypervisor technology. Okay, let's see for example here. Okay, let's go back quickly. So I'll be going through that, complete demo maybe later. Okay, let's have example. I'm going to EC2 instance this kind of a hypervisor, like kind of a virtual machine hypervisor. So virtual machine hypervisor. So what happens is that, if you can go back to the console. Okay, so the Amazon will be having a hypervisor installed in a lot of different places, right? Or data centers in different places. Now we can install your own machine. Okay, for example, I'm going to have this EC2 instance maybe later. Okay, but how do we able to access these particular machines? Okay, so I'll be creating one virtual machine on the different region. Okay, what is the region I mentioned with you? So region is nothing but the data centers located in specific geographical area. For example, in India, so we have a 3 to 4 data centers been created. Okay, so all the data centers are connected together. That is called as a
High availability.
high availability. For the high availability, all the data centers been called. Okay, it's been created. Again in the AWS terms is called as a regions and availability zones. Okay, so availability zones. Okay, I think it is taking a lot of time to access this one. Let me just close some of the because I'm sharing my I'm recording my screen and it's probably is getting late. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one Linux virtual machine. Okay, I'm going to give some of the name. Okay, probably I can just open it, in a fraction of minutes. So meanwhile, you can just ask me some question if you have any other questions. So hope you understand the hypervisor and how it works. Okay, so why we need hypervisor? So now what Amazon is be doing, AWS is doing, they have so much of data centers. They install hypervisor on all the servers. Using that data centers and servers, you'll be able to access some kind of a virtual machine through that. Okay, that is called as a hypervisor concept. Yes, right. Okay, any other questions?
Understood.
Yeah, yes. Okay, any other questions? Anything else? Ask me any other questions. What is hypervisor? And we have seen what is hypervisor, what is cloud computing, and what is data centers. What is Dell servers? So what's going to be inside the Dell servers? Okay, and all these things we have seen. Any other questions? I'll give you some 3 to 4 minutes of time, and meanwhile, if you have any other questions, you can just ask me.
So just to clarify, the type 1 is how to we just use the user ID and password to access the service, and type 2 is like we are hosting our own service in our own PC.
Yes. So type 2, okay, yeah, type 2 hypervisor. Okay, what is type 2 hypervisor? Type 2 hypervisor is nothing but, so whenever, it's not like, we'll be installing in a laptop. Okay, type 2 hypervisor is nothing but, even though this can be a, okay, even though this can be a bigger hardware, okay, so, okay, even though it can be bigger hardware, okay, if you install the operating system, some of the Windows or Linux operating system directly on top of the servers, okay, that is called as a type 2 hypervisor. Type 2 means, so, okay, just imagine about the layers. Okay, so type 1 hypervisor means on top of hardware you're directly installing hypervisor. Okay, that's called the type 1, means you have only one layer. Okay, so now the type 2 means you have a hardware, on top of that you're installing the operating system, on top of that you're installing the hypervisor, and on top of that you're installing the virtual machine. Okay, so in this case you will be having a 2 layers. Okay, so 2 layers is called as a type 2. Type 2 means you have a 2 layers in between. That's why it's called as a type 2 hypervisor. Okay, the type 1 hypervisor is you have only one layer. So what happens is that whenever the OS is there, okay, this kind of a virtual machines, Let me see. Okay, I'm going to launch in one instance. I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so I'm going to create. I'm going to show you, all these things later. Okay, so proceed without keypad. I'm launching it. Okay, meanwhile. Okay, so meanwhile, you guys are having a questions. All right, now if you can see the type one hypervisor, the virtual machines will be directly talk to the hardware to get the resources with the only one layer. Okay, but in terms of the second one, okay, in terms of second one, the your applications on all the OSs has to go through your operating system and then the hardware. It should go to the get the resources straight away. Okay, so let's have an example in terms of real time world, right? In real time world, okay, for example, you have a you have a college. Okay, if you want to get your the college the semester examination or your notebook to be get signed, or lab records to be get signed. Okay, the type 1 hypervisor is that let's say for example you're the OS. Okay, if you want to reach to the principal, or if you want to reach to the this hardware is kind of a HOD. Just consider. Okay, if you wanted to go to the HOD, what you have to do is that you have to just go through your stuff, and then you can go through the HOD directly. Okay, so virtualization is that something some of the kind of a staff. Okay, some of the staff you go to the HOD room, you go and reach that particular person. Okay, I want to meet the HOD, then the HOD that person will allow you to the meet HOD, right? But here is what's happening. Okay, so there is a middle layer is there. Okay, so let's say for example this is the operating system. Okay, it can be installed over there. Then you have to go and give all your nodes to your team, the team lead. Okay, team leader, or a class leader. Okay, the class leader will again go and give all your notebooks to the virtualization layer. Okay, and then that particular guy will go and give the nodes to the hardware again. Okay, so this kind of a two different layers is there. Okay, so the what's the advantage of layer 1 and layer 2 is that in the layer 1 your OS will be behaving very faster because it can reach the hardware and get the resources very faster. So in this type 2 hypervisor, the fastness will be very slower, which means that so the number of requests is going through the operating system, reaching the hardware and getting back is very very low. Okay, that's why it's called as a type 1 type 2 hypervisor. Now tell me, okay, let me just is this instance is launched. I'm going to show you how the hypervisor is working. Okay, I'm going to open this one. Now tell me, okay, so if you want to just give me a minute, I'm going to launch this instance. Meanwhile, okay, it's just still getting loaded. Okay, now anybody can tell me which one is better, type 1 or type 2?
If it compares as compared to speed,
Yeah,
type 1 is better, I believe.
type 1 is better. So why not type 2 is better?
Because the process will be slow as compared to
Yeah,
type 1.
because it has to go through two layers, right? It has to go through two layers. That's why the type 2 hypervisor is always getting slower. Okay, now I'm going to connect to this machine. Okay, so for example, so this particular OS is being installed, okay, on the servers, okay, on the data center. Okay, now I'm trying to access this particular server. Okay, it's just trying to get it. Okay, now as you can mention, type 2 hypervisor, okay, it's very very slower than type 1 hypervisor. Okay, this is the major difference between type 1 and type 2 hypervisors. Okay, any other question, guys? Okay, I'm going to connect it. This server, I don't know where is this server installed. Okay, so this server has been provisioned in the region called Stockholm. Okay, in the Europe region, the Stockholm region, my server has got installed. Okay, so now I'm going to access this particular virtual machine through the console from my laptop. Okay, guys, any other questions? Okay, again, I'm going to give you last 2 minutes or 2 to 3 minutes for the questions. Any other questions?
Sir, I have a doubt. So
Yeah, yeah.
now now you told me that, now you said that the instance is listed in somewhere in Europe,
Yeah.
Stockholm, right? So what is that, in the URL it is mentioned as North-2. So what is that region?
URL is mentioned is, sir, what?
You can go back to the BC2 instance page and show you.
Yeah.
Yeah, bc-north-1.console.aws.com.
This
So
one?
what is the bc-north-1?
This one, you mean?
In the URL, yes.
Okay. So now I'm going to explain it to you now. What is that one? Okay. Now, as you can see here, right, so this instance is getting created. Okay. As you can see here, Stockholm. Okay. So each and every region is being named with a region ID. Okay. So each and every region have a named with a region ID. Okay. What is the region ID for each and every each and every data centers? So it's kind of a what I told you before. What is regions?
Place where a data center is hosted.
Yes. So region is, we can call it as a collection of data centers put together and connected together. It's called as a region. Right. Now, where we have created this server, this is called a Stockholm region is got created. The region name or region ID is going to be EU North 1. Okay. Region name is going to be, region name is going to be the Stockholm, and then region ID. This is the region ID. Region ID is going to be EU North 1. Okay. So this is the region name. So what is going to be the individual data center's name? So now individual data center's name is going to be EU North 1B. Okay, this is called the individual data centers inside the region. Understand? So now if you can see here, okay, if you see here, this is the region. Okay, this is Stockholm region. So we have a 3 to 4 data centers out there. Okay, 3 to 4 data centers are installed. Now this particular region is called as a Stockholm. It's called as a EU. What's the name you may have seen? EU North 1. North-1. Okay. So now this data center's name is going to be EU North 1A, and then this one is going to be EU North 1B, North 1C. Okay. So all these data centers are connected together. Okay. So this one is called the region. Okay. This one is called as a region. So this individual data center is called as a availability zone. Is used for availability. Okay. That's why, as you can see here, it's called as a availability zone. Okay. This is automatically picking up the any other availability zone if you don't specify it directly. All right. Okay. This is called as a availability zone. Okay.
Say for example, if I am trying to create one and if the availability zone is available only with 1B, the instance that I'm going to create will fall under EU North 1B.
Yes, exactly. Okay, I'm going to show you how it's going to be there. Okay, before that, I'm going to show you that the instance is got created, right? So previously we launched one instance. This instance is being launched. Okay, this is what the Linux instance. Okay, if you can type some ls or some kind of commands, you'll be able to access this command remotely. So this particular instance will be accessible by your browser. Okay. Now, as you can see here, now I'm going to create a instance. Okay, so create instance, and as I mentioned with you, this is the so this is the Stockholm region. Okay. Now, if you can see subnets, each and every subnet is being created under EU 1A, 1B, 1C. Based on this networking, you can just choose which data center or which availability zone your instance is going to be residing. Got my point?
Yeah.
Okay, this is called availability zone and regions and cloud computing and virtualization and type 1 hypervisor and type 2 hypervisor. All these concepts put together. We also created one single instance today. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording and we are going to see again another interesting topic by tomorrow around so a lot of different topics we are going to see, and we see you again in the next class. Okay, for now I'm just stopping the recording.